Welcome everybody to another webinar in the Boost Your Career series of webinars that are co-sponsored by Sue Mentors and Tulane University. Today we're going to talk about, yes, you do have experience and here's how to show it. This is part one of a two-part webinar because we had so much information we wanted to share with you and it's all integrated. So you'll see in part two that there'll be some similar items, but in much more depth. The questions we're going to answer today are all around the idea of demonstrating your experience and your value, really in a variety of situations. So not just people who are new graduates, but job changes and even being able to demonstrate team value. First, I want to talk about a concept that's out there in a lot of companies about everybody has to hire rock stars. Here's some rock stars at Tulane. They're well known, but guess what? The rest of us, including me, are in that little half filled in star down below. But that doesn't mean that we all can't do great work and find ways to show the unique benefits that we bring to the work we do without being the VP at Apple or a well-known author. I wanted to show you this pile of this group of rocks because I hear from mentees these kinds of topics and complaints. I look at everybody as not just being in a bunch of a whole lot of people, but if you think about these rocks, they're beautiful, different sizes, different shapes, different colors. And if I pick one out, they have that one has a lot I can define about them. But together they do look like a bunch of rocks. What I want to start with immediately is to tell you, you are going to hear today that you really do have more experience than you realize, even if you feel you're at a very early career stage. So let's think of this rock formation instead of those rocks. This to me looks like four teams, four pillars of rocks. They're reporting on up the chain to a team leader, project director. But notice that one little rock in the red circle. That rock helps the rest of the large pile stay balanced because of its unique shape and form. And that's what we're going to find for each of you in terms of things you can highlight about yourself. Before we start answering the questions, I have a few concepts I'd like to go over about who are you. To be clear that we're all talking about the same kind of person, person, and what we are. Almost all of us on this webinar and the mentees that I work with are what we call knowledge workers. We don't get paid to do something, we get paid to produce something. So even though we may be one of many, for example, working in architectural design, we have some kind of product we have to work with our internal team on, our external clients or donors on. And you'll see here a variety of positions that are people that use knowledge to produce their products. The second concept I want to go over with you is about innovators and what I call everyday innovators. I went back to this definition because I've been hearing for a decade, you have to produce innovations. And I kept thinking, not everybody can be innovating and developing Google search or Amazon's business model. But yet we're hired for the expertise that we bring. So how do we showcase it? And you'll see the definition of innovator doesn't say earth-shaking, doesn't say totally never thought of before. It says new methods, ideas, or products. And in my book, everybody can be and is an everyday innovator. You just have to showcase it in a way that people understand. So how are they going to understand it? Well, everyday innovators produce what I call your intellectual property. So it's not the person on the left who's doing things, and we all have times that we sit at the computer to do data analysis or write a business proposal. It's the products that come out of the verbs in the middle so that you end up like the woman on the right is doing. Her product is done. It looks like she might have done a project brief for maybe a client. She's got some graphs, some maps, a little summary written explanation there of what the results are. So that your intellectual property are the things you produce while you do your work. And I'll show you how we're going to capture those. The final concept today is, as we've covered in other webinars, you need to understand what you look like to people, either in person, on the phone, or in writing. And so many of you will come to me with resumes you say you've updated, or a CV, and I'm sure you feel you're the polished professional. I admire anybody who's done an update and actually put it on LinkedIn. That's great in my books. But that's not how I always see the advice that you're getting from other people. When I look at it, it looks more like a little girl playing dress up. Her bracelets are just thrown on. They're way up at her elbows, like she's not even wearing them in the right place. And I equate this with a long skills list that doesn't show any kind of rating except for the Spanish native bilingual. It doesn't tell me if you're expert level or advanced level in all of these, or whether you're only basic in doing using Microsoft Excel to do a budget, or whether you're advanced in using R for data visualization. Her beads are like Mardi Gras beads. I love Mardi Gras beads. And they're all sorts of colors and shapes and lengths. But to me, it's all the buzzwords that I can tell resume writers and people who read the advice out on the web are using. The last one drives me nuts. Optimize results to maximize impact. I know what they're trying to say, but as far as I'm concerned, it's all empty. It doesn't tell anybody. There's no evidence behind it. And the topic I talk most about mentees with is what I call self-value judgment words. You've chosen adjectives, and everybody will give you advice about, tell everybody you're excellent, you're an independent worker and a great team player. And I don't have any way to judge that evidence. So instead of the shoes that are too big for this little girl with a whole lot of air behind them, they're too broad, get rid of the self-value judgment words, and in the same amount of space, tell me, what is your proven ability to manage multiple projects? What you say is manage 3 two-year projects without problems in meeting deadlines and keeping within budget. Very simple off the top of my head. All right, now that we've gone through those concepts, I'd like to answer the questions, and they group into, I don't really have experience, I have limited experience, but I want to make a job change, and how can I demonstrate my value? So in this first topic area, first of all, I want you to know that I'll show you real examples of mentees' work that I help them revise, and they've all approved me to use this information. Second, this section has several sub areas to demonstrate for solutions for demonstrating your experience. But this section is very long and it has a lot of different solutions in it. So we've actually developed a part 2 of this webinar called I Really Do Have Experience, where we delve into each of these sub areas and give you the real world before and after examples. So you can look for that webinar as well. The first sub area I want to talk about is something I call don't make me do your work for you. And I don't mean that you're going to go out and shovel for me. What I mean is don't make it hard for the reader to find information that you're trying to get them to absorb. One solution I have is to get rid of the laundry list of bullets. Don't give me 6 to 8 to 10 bullets saying, even if they're accomplishment oriented, saying I manage 45 people on 3 different teams. When you have that many bullets, it's hard to absorb the information. Instead, you should be able to describe every job as 2 to 3 tasks at which you spend 75% of your work time. The second solution is spend your space wisely. This is a 2-page resume, and after we revised it, we took the same amount of space, but it didn't have a whole lot of education and certifications to wade through before you learned right up top about what this person's background was and what she is able to do. Moving on to this section, this is about the intellectual property I mentioned, and I'll show you the specific examples. But you need to show what you own, and you need to own it. You need to be able to identify these things because they help you demonstrate your results in an evidence-based way. So on the left is an 8-bullet job description someone had in her work in South Africa. And nowhere did she have a section in her long CV about what reports, presentations, and other work she'd done. So as you can see here, she's been able to demonstrate that she's written a chapter in an annual report. That's a big deal. She's detailed the SOPs, standard operating procedures, as well. And even more importantly, she didn't realize till we did this work, she had forgotten to mention she developed training tools for people. A second solution in this area is make sure you include everything you've done. In this resume, the graduate student, she was a new graduate student, had written a publication as an undergraduate, but I found in these two large ovals, I found a lot more things that she could talk about, including developing educational materials, which is important for her in public health school, some background work, some work she'd done as an undergraduate in research as well. I know people are going to look at this topic and think, use your schooling. Of course I'm using my schooling. I went to school. But what I find is people seem to be forgetful, or we speak in shortcuts instead of really describing what we've done. So I get people who tell me on the left, I see a gray picture of them because they say conducted a study, did a literature review. Well, if you conduct a study, I have no idea what that means, because here's 3 of many different kinds of studies you can do as a researcher or an evaluator. So be descriptive, what it was, how it was. And in addition to answering questions, which is what we all learn in school and learn in resume writing about who, what, when, where, and why, make sure you answer questions, use the measures of volume, frequency, and duration. So tell me that you managed 3 teams of people over a 2-year period, meeting with them every week to keep the projects on track. So you've given people a lot more description so that they can see what experience you have and what your results show. And I know that many people now accept that volunteer is often work experience, but let me show you in this last sub area my formula. And this is how I advise mentees to correctly count their experience. If you've done 1 to 2 hours a week, 6 to 8 hours a month for at least 2 to 3 months, that demonstrates regular commitment to the work that the organization or the group is doing, and you're helping them make progress and you're learning from that as well. All right, our second big area is on what do I do if I have limited experience and I want to make a job change? First thing you can do, the solution is you can weave either showing your commitment without saying the word I'm committed to, and or fragmented experience. You can weave it together in a story. So here's a piece of a resume on the left under the talking woman, where the student in undergrad had helped start a public health association, but also worked on an advisory council and did some research there. So I highlighted in yellow that we could talk about commitment in terms of things she actually did. So don't tell me you're committed to marginalized populations. Tell me that where you've worked with them. So examples will help you. And in this case, this was her summary paragraph right at the beginning of her resume. You can also think about, for a job change, what I call adjacencies. These are skills that can apply to many kinds of areas. So we use adjacencies all the time because most of us can manage budgets and financial reports, and we can also do project management. But there are skills like communications, advocacy, and policy work, facilitation, where you can apply those skills in a variety of technical areas. In this case, this is a resume of someone who was a journalist, and she'd worked for several years and then decided that she wanted to do more than just report on problems. She wanted to affect changes in the problems she was reporting about. So she went back to public health school, and I worked with her in her last semester of school to help her have more impact in what she was writing. And you can see here she's done a lot of interesting things, but it was really hard to pick out what did she do as a journalist and what was she doing in public health. So here now is her full CV, which is 4 pages. And if you want to know more about writing long to write short, make sure you check out our resume and CV webinar. But note on the last page, that's her intellectual property. So she traced a story in her paragraph, her summary paragraph at the top left, about how she can apply her communication, her journalism skills to communications. But you also see she's made it very clear, separating out her journalism articles, including links, from the work she's doing in public health. And the public health work stands out because she worked on something that had an impact on child mortality. So she could easily convey that she had background in behavior change and health education, even though she was still just applying for jobs as she's graduating. Let's turn on now to how can I demonstrate my value. This is our third topic. This applies to how do I define and show my value as part of a team, but also to very senior people have the same issue. And I'm going to show you 2 examples of that. On the bottom right, you've already seen this list. It's in more detail from the journalist who was able to define the things that she's worked on. And she can now summarize in a 2-page resume or in a cover letter. I've worked on X amount of journalism articles focused on the Syrian refugee crisis through Turkey's eyes. And I've also worked on childhood mortality. Everybody to demonstrate value and so that you have your intellectual property collected in one place should have a long CV, that is everything you've ever done in your life, your career. And it can be called publications, reports, presentations, but also I gave you a blank 2 pages from someone's very long CV in the upper left. And you see there, she separated out presentations from posters, and she also separated out training curricula, workshops, and other trainings. These are things she has developed and delivered, not training she's been in. So I wanted you to know that it doesn't have to have the same title, but you need to make it easy for people to find it and for you to then use it to summarize in job applications, in cover letters, and even in talking about your accomplishments, most importantly. Finally, lest you think that I mostly focus on people at a very junior level, here's a colleague that I worked with at a very senior level who said to me, you know, I really want to, I'm well known in my niche area. I want to move out of that, though, into a larger role. Even though I'm on a global stage, it's just the people in my specific area that know me. So now we're going back to a little bit of a focus on the summary paragraph, or what I call the bio para. The upper left corner is what she had written and was on her full CV, which was great. She at least had something there. But there's a lot of empty buzzwords, and I don't know what strong focus on programming in all of these means. I was able to help her make it much longer than the 7 lines that it is, but she's showcased her accomplishments in an evidence-based way. She's now telling a compelling story with numbers. For example, at the bottom, she has an $80 million project she directed, increased the reach and funding to cover more than 20 countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America. I have a clear picture of what that looks like now. Okay, we're at the end now, and I like to end with 2 questions. The first is, why do you do this? Well, now you've filled in your star. Now you have an evidence-based story that gives the reader a full, or the listener, a full picture of who you are. You've synthesized your accomplishments by using your schooling, categorizing your intellectual property, and you've also demonstrated your career pathway. And then finally, the so what question is, how does this help you? Well, now you can speak confidently with your actual results, speaking and expanding on your experiences. You have your professional self put together and polished, and you also have a broadened view of your opportunities for yourself. Thank you very much for attending today, the webinar. Sue and Sarah are always happy to hear from you about questions, comments, and we'd love to know about additional topics that you're interested in. Thank you very much.